I'm not talking about
angle.
Have journalists from organisations like the Associated Press been banned by the White House, yes or no?
Yes, they have.
Right. Have judges been threatened with impeachment because the White House doesn't like their rulings? Yes or no?
Let's not do it that way. Let's go back to that. And yes. Why were they? Why were they banned?
But so we accept, right, are we accepting that all the things I just suggested have happened?
If you don't let me finish.
Hey guys, welcome back to Lucas Rant, a former Trump advisor. Just came on UK national radio to lecture Britain about free speech and got taken apart by one question she could not answer. She opens with an 82-year-old man arrested for a Facebook post as her example of censorship in the UK. The host asks one thing: what did he actually post? She cannot remember. Cannot remember the case she just used as her centerpiece argument. The host then asks her to name one single thing you cannot say in the UK right now without fear of arrest. She cannot do that either. Then the host lists 10 documented examples of free speech being attacked in America under Trump, journalists banned from the White House, judges threatened with impeachment, universities defunded, students arrested for social media posts. She calls it biased. He asks which ones did not happen. Silence, full breakdown at the end. Subscribe, and let's get into it.
It's funny that you think that he's taking a dig. Do you not think that when an 82-year-old man is arrested for posting something on Facebook, that is not a form of censorship?
Well, it depends what he posts, doesn't it? It depends if it's legal.
Well,
what did that 82-year-old man post?
Well, let's back up a minute here. If we are starting to scrutinize everything that someone says, if we're arresting them because it is hate speech.
What is that? You mentioned a specific case there. What is it this 82-year-old was arrested for?
Honestly, I can't remember, but what I do remember...
You're telling me that it's outrageous that an 82-year-old man was...
Back up a minute.
No, sorry, this is important because you just said this is an example of free speech under threat in the UK, but you can't tell me what he was arrested for.
I don't remember the exact...
So why you bring it up then?
I brought it up as an example that if we are scrutinizing what an 82-year-old man posts on Facebook...
But you can't assess that without knowing what he said, can you?
Well, you know what? Let's just say I brought up a wrong example because I don't have the context
Could it possibly be because it's all a load of nonsense and free speech isn't under threat in the UK at all, which I think you've just demonstrated respectfully?
You know what? I've been there I've lived in the UK for 24 years. And yes, I do believe that censorship, it started with political correctness.
Right.
And as political correctness moved from accusing people of microaggressions and then people getting triggered over what somebody said, it has been a form of putting a speech straitjacket on people.
So what can't you say in the UK right now without being arrested that you think people should have the right to say?
You know what? That's a very good question.
It is. Thank you.
It is. I can't answer that question, and I can't give you an example exactly. But see, what I find interesting.
Sorry, Jane. You've given me an example of free speech being under threat. You can't tell me what the person said.
Well,
I've asked you for one single thing that you can't say in the UK without fear of being arrested, and you can't think of anything. It's because Britain still is a country, compared to the United States, by the way, where free speech absolutely exists and always will.
Well, we both see it differently then.
But you can't give me any single point of evidence whatsoever to back up your idea.
Why don't you give me an example of how free speech still exists and censorship is not there?
Because you don't get arrested by the police for saying anything that isn't incitement or hate speech in this country. People are free to express their opinions. People are free to give their views. We do not have a police state in this country, unlike, I might say, the way that the United States is going under Donald Trump.
Well, that's interesting because it's not going that way with Donald Trump. It was going that way, and it's now reversing itself.
Right. So banning journalists from the White House because you don't like what they've written, demanding the impeachment of judges because you don't like what they've ruled, sacking government officials because they've dared to criticise you at any point in recent years, defunding universities because they're not doing what you do, threatening law firms if they don't toe the party line, defunding media organisations that you think are against you, arresting students because of what they've written on social media, and ramping up checks of people entering the UK to check they haven't posted anything on Facebook that you don't like, doesn't amount to any sort of attack on free speech.
That's really twisting things without the specific
facts.
examples. You're giving
They're facts.
No, you're giving examples the same way I gave the example
But you didn't
of the
give any examples, and I've just given you 10.
No, you've just given me a very biased perspective.
Bias is facts. All of those things have happened. Which of those haven't happened? Have journalists been banned from the White House under the Trump administration?
Have journalists been banned, or have they brought in alternative media that presents a different
I'm not talking about
angle?
Have journalists from organisations like the Associated Press been banned by the White House, yes or no?
Yes, they have.
Right. Have judges been threatened with impeachment because the White House doesn't like their rulings? Yes or no?
Let's not do it that way. Let's go back to that. And
yes.
Why were they? Why were they banned?
But so we accept, right? Are we accepting that all the things I just suggested have happened?
If you don't let me finish, then we can't really have a conversation here because you've got a very biased perspective.
I'm not
here,
biased at all.
very angle.
I'm giving you facts, and I'm just asking whether you recognise that those things are true.
You know what? It's so interesting. Did we not have a bunch of fake news here? And in the U.S., we did. And why? Why did we have fake news? Because it was biased and it was wrong. And so that is one of the reasons. You're listing 10 things and cutting me off. But then why was the Associated Press no longer welcome? Because they gave fake news that has been proven. But
Jenny, you coming on the national radio station here on LBC and saying an 82-year-old man being arrested is an attack on free speech without having a clue what he's actually said is not fake news at all.
It's not. It's not that I haven't had a clue. I can't remember the specifics.
Right.
But the fact that.
But how can you know it's an attack on free speech if you can't remember what he'd actually said?
Well, it's very interesting because you started this off by saying J.D. Vance had a dig. And so we don't get to have an intelligent discussion about whether there really is censorship going on, if people are afraid to speak out. But
he has had a dig, and that's his own language. He said previously when he talked about the UK...
No, you called it a dig.
Let's talk about what just happened, because this was not a debate that went sideways. This was a Trump advisor coming on to UK national radio completely unprepared and getting exposed by the most basic form of journalistic accountability, just asking for evidence. Start with the 82-year-old Facebook post, because that is where everything unravels. She introduced that case herself. She chose it as her example of censorship in the UK. And when the host asked the single most obvious follow-up, what did he actually post, she could not answer. She walked onto national radio with a case she could not describe to make an argument she could not support. When the host correctly pointed out that you cannot assess whether an arrest represents censorship without knowing what was said, she admitted she brought up the wrong example. That moment alone should end the segment, but it got worse. The host asked her to name one single thing a person cannot say in the UK right now without fear of arrest. One example: if free speech is genuinely under threat, that should take 3 seconds. She said it was a very good question, thanked him for it, and admitted she had no answer. That is not a debating stumble. That is the complete absence of a factual foundation for the position she came on air to, defends, and here's what makes it damning. While she sat there, unable to name a single example of censorship in the UK, the host listed 10 documented examples of free speech being attacked in America under Trump. Not allegations, Documented facts. AP journalists banned from the White House. She confirmed it. Judges threatened with impeachment for rulings the administration disliked. Universities defunded over-campus speech policies, words like gender and LGBT banned from federal communications, students arrested for social media posts, protesters cracked down on. She called the list biased. He asked which ones had not happened. She could not identify a single inaccuracy. The AP ban deflection is the most dishonest moment in the exchange. The Associated Press was excluded from White House access because they referred to the Gulf of Mexico by its traditional name instead of the administration's preferred Gulf of America. That is not fake news. That is a news organization making an editorial judgment and being punished with loss of access. If that is the standard, the free speech emergency is not in the UK. J.D. Vance flew to Europe to lecture allied governments about censorship while his administration was banning journalists, threatening judges, defunding universities, and prohibiting words in federal communications. That posture only works if nobody in the room is prepared to list what is actually happening. The host was prepared. She was not. And the result was one of the most complete on-air collapses you will see from someone. With a doctorate and decades of political experience, this is what defending the indefensible looks like. Not evil, just completely unprepared, because the position has no factual foundation to prepare from. Like this video, share it with everyone who still thinks the free speech crisis is in Europe. Subscribe to Lucas Rant. We bring the receipts every time. See you in the next one.